When 4 people sat down for a homemade Sunday lunch, within days, 3 were dead, 1 clinging to life. The meal, Beef Wellington. The twist. It may have been laced with one of the deadliest poisons on earth, death cap mushrooms. At the heart of it all, Erin Patterson, a mother, a host, now the accused in one of Australia's most chilling murder trials. Was it a fatal error or a calculated act of murder? This is the case that shocked the country. Welcome to the trial of Erin Patterson. Erin Trudy Patterson was born on September the 30th, 1974. She grew up in Glen Waverley, a quiet suburb in southeast Melbourne, Australia. Bright and ambitious, she entered a science programme at the University of Melbourne in 1992. But later she switched to accounting, then trained as an air traffic controller, graduating in 2001. She worked for Air Services Australia, then for the RSPCA at Monash City Council, where she met engineer Simon Patterson in 2004. They began dating soon after. Simon described her as very intelligent, witty and funny. They married on June 2nd, 2007, and then they travelled around Australia before settling in Perth, finding work and having their first child. After returning from Northern Australia, Erin moved into a rental while Simon lived nearby in a caravan park. She was struggling inside herself, Simon said. Though outwardly composed, Erin privately battled depression, low self-esteem and binge eating. She'd once been an atheist, but she joined Simon's Baptist church, becoming active in the faith community while quietly wrestling with personal demons. In 2006, Erin inherited £2 million from her grandmother. This would be paid out to Erin in instalments. The money helped fund their living expenses and support Simon's siblings with interest-free loans, but financial stability didn't bring Erin peace. In 2013, they returned to Victoria, living briefly in Benner before buying a home in Coimbra. By 2015, Erin had purchased a second house in the same town and moved out. Simon said he always wanted a strong marriage for their children, but Erin later called their relationship toxic. In 2019, Erin joined a Facebook group dedicated to the Kelly Lane case. The Kelly Lane case centres around the 1996 disappearance of her newborn daughter Tegan, just 2 days after her birth. Lane claimed that she gave the baby to the father, but no such person was found. She was convicted of Tegan's murder in 2010, though a body was never found. So Erin joined this Facebook group dedicated to that case. She formed close bonds with 4 other members in the group, and eventually they all made a group chat. Their private group chat became a place to share personal lives. Erin opened up about feeling her marriage was controlling and said that she was concerned about Simon's parenting. She would also complain to them about Simon's parents. The group also bonded over food. Erin spoke about getting a dehydrator, which is something that dries out food, and that she was drying out mushrooms, a hobby sparked by her COVID-19 era interest in foraging. She often picked and ate wild mushrooms and asked the group for help making a Beef Wellington. She was frustrated because she couldn't find the right meat cut. By 2022, her marriage had deteriorated. Although the couple were already separated at this point, Erin and Simon did keep in regular contact while co-parenting. They would even take the children on holidays as a family and remained friends. However, in 2022 that year, Simon's tax return mistakenly listed him as separated, making Erin ineligible for child support. Simon said it was his accountant's error and he didn't tell his accountant to do this. But Erin was furious and involved his parents, Don and Gail Patterson, to mediate, straining their once close bond. Erin grew distant and communication with Simon became cold and minimal. By July 2023, Erin was living in Leongatha. Despite tensions, she invited Simon, his parents, Simon's aunt and uncle, over to lunch, extending the invitation at a Baptist church service they were all at together. The family was surprised by the invitation due to the ongoing conflict and how unusual it was for Erin to even host dinner parties, but they all agreed after Erin said she had serious health news and needed to discuss it. She asked for the children not to attend so she could plan how to tell them herself. With this news in mind, everybody agreed to attend the dinner. Simon, however, later backed out via text, saying he felt uncomfortable. Erin replied, "That's really disappointing. I've spent many hours this week preparing lunch for tomorrow, which has been exhausting in light of the issues I'm facing. And I've spent a small fortune of beef eye fillet to make Beef Wellington, because I wanted it to be a special meal, as I may not be able to host a lunch like this again for some time. It's important to me that you're all there tomorrow, and that I can have the conversations that I need to have. I hope you'll change your mind. Your parents and Heather and Ian are coming at 12:30. I hope to see you there." Despite her effort, Simon declined again. It was just after midday when the guests arrived at Erin's home. Gail and Don carrying an orange cake along with Heather and Ian not far behind. It was a seemingly ordinary day. Inside, the table was already set. Erin then carefully plated each meal. 4 large grey plates and 1 smaller one, a distinct orangey tan colour. Each guest received a beef Wellington that looked more like a pasty, served with mashed potatoes and green beans. She took the odd plate for herself. They ate together, chatting as people do over a home-cooked meal. Then as the plates were being cleared and the conversation lulled, she dropped news that she needed to share regarding her health. She told them that she had cancer. The guests, clearly shocked, discussed how they could be there to support Erin and talked about how to best tell her children. And with that, after chatter, dinner and dessert, the guests left and headed home. Weeks later, Ian would wake from a coma to discover that he was the only guest who survived that lunch. The day after the lunch, a troubling pattern began to unfold. All 4 guests who had gathered at Erin Patterson's home fell ill and were rushed to the hospital, showing signs of what doctors suspected to be gastroenteritis. Erin herself turned up at Leongatha Hospital, complaining of stomach pains and severe diarrhoea. But despite her symptoms, she refused to be admitted. In the quiet corridors of Austin Health's intensive care unit, seasoned doctors were brought to a standstill by what they witnessed. Dr. Stephen Warrilow, Director of Intensive Care, had seen many critically ill patients in his career, but nothing like this. 4 people had arrived in rapid succession, each spiralling into a state of multi-organ failure. They had all shared the same meal, a homemade Beef Wellington, prepared by Erin Patterson. And they were, as Dr. Warrilow would put it, devastatingly unwell. It was the sickest cluster of patients in the state, he recalled, unusual in that they were all similarly afflicted, critically ill, and failing on every front. The symptoms were unmistakable. The liver was the first to shut down, then the kidneys. Circulatory systems collapsed, toxins built up in the blood, and as the liver failed, it dragged the rest of the body with it. The culprit was a poison of astonishing potency, one that led doctors to suspect something far more sinister than foodborne illness. Suspicions grew quickly. The toxin's signature effects pointed to one of the deadliest substances in nature, the death cap mushroom. Patterson's guests, Gail and Don Patterson, Heather and Ian Wilkinson, were all placed on ventilators and dialysis machines in a desperate attempt to purge the poison. But for Gail and Heather, it was already too late. Their organs were failing far too fast for even a liver transplant to be an option. On August the 4th, Gail Patterson, 70, and Heather Wilkinson, aged 66, passed away in hospital. Don, who did receive a transplant, tragically didn't survive either and passed away the very next day. Before we move into what happened, it's important to remember who this story is really about 3 people died as a result of that meal. Don Patterson, Erin's former father-in-law, Gail Patterson, her former mother-in-law, Heather Wilkinson, aged 66, Gail's sister. All 3 were well known and respected in their local communities. Don and Gail were described as gentle, generous and loving people who remained active in their church and family life. Heather too was known for her warmth and kindness, a devoted wife and mother who served alongside her husband in their ministry. Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson, a 16-year-old local pastor, was the only one to survive this poisoning. He fell critically ill after the lunch and spent weeks in intensive care. His survival was only made possible by a life-saving liver transplant. The damage he endured both physically and emotionally is immeasurable. Ian lost his wife over 40 years. Ian lost his wife of over 40 years and 2 close friends, all within days. A memorial service held at their church in Corrumbra drew a quiet but heartfelt gathering. Hymns were sung, their names were read aloud. The pain in the community was palpable. One note left in Heather's honour simply read, "Your love, your strength, your grace, we will carry them with us." And perhaps most chilling of all is the fact that 2 of the victims, Heather and Ian Wilkinson, had no known conflict with Erin Patterson. They were just guests at a dinner party. They were parents, grandparents, spouses, people who were loved deeply and are now mourned deeply. Ian Wilkinson, as I mentioned, did pull through. His recovery was remarkable, made possible only by the extraordinary work by the ICU's clinical team. Ian had incredibly high levels of acid and ammonia in his blood. He looked like someone who was going to die, and it is, to be quite frank, a miracle that he didn't. But the medical puzzle was only part of the unfolding story. For Dr. Chris Webster, who had treated Heather Wilkinson prior to the incident, the events were particularly distressing. He knew Heather and Ian well. Humble, softly spoken, respectful, he said. The kind of couple you don't forget. When Erin told the doctor that the mushrooms she had used had come from a local Woolworths, something didn't sit right. Her tone, her manner, her distance. She had this cold, sociopathic air about her, Webster said. Even as she sat near the 2 dying people, Heather and Ian, there was no visible concern, no emotion, nothing. The absence of empathy became a defining clue. It was stark, disturbing, Dr. Webster said. Concerns quickly extended beyond Erin. Doctors learned that Erin and Simon's children may have eaten leftovers from the Beef Wellington, though reportedly without the mushrooms or pastry. Fearing possible adverse reactions, medical professionals urged that the children be examined as well. Erin, it was said, initially hesitated to have them seen by doctors. Ian Wilkinson remained in critical condition for more than 7 weeks, fighting for his life. Remarkably, he survived and was discharged on September the 23rd. Just over a week later, on October the 4th, he sadly had to say goodbye to his wife, Heather, at her funeral. Hospital staff were obviously alarmed by everybody's condition that they were treating. They didn't understand the severity of the illness and the urgency of the treatment required, and it didn't take long before the situation was escalated to the authorities. The Department of Health quickly moved to interview Erin Patterson, hoping to unravel the mystery behind the food poisoning that had struck her guests so violently. When questioned, Erin explained that she had brought dried mushrooms from an Asian grocery store in Melbourne's southeast and had added them to the Beef Wellington she had prepared for the lunch. In response, Monash Council began searching the area, visiting Asian-style grocery stores in the southeast to track down any dried mushrooms that might match Erin's description. However, despite their efforts, they came up empty-handed. None of the stores carried mushrooms that matched the kind Erin had mentioned. Soon the investigation expanded. Victoria Police took over, launching a full inquiry into the events surrounding the July 29 lunch. On August the 5th, exactly 1 week after the disastrous meal, Erin Patterson was summoned to Wonthaggi police station. There, she was interviewed by detectives. It wasn't long before the police arrested her, charging her with the 3 counts of murder: the death of her former in-laws, Gail and Donald Patterson, and her aunt-in-law, Heather Wilkinson. Erin, of course, denied everything. Police believed Erin Patterson had deliberately picked death cap mushrooms, prepared them, and added them to the beef Wellington she served her dinner guests, intending to kill. During her trial this year, the prosecution laid out a chilling chain of evidence. Erin initially denied owning a food dehydrator, the very appliance investigators said she used to prepare the deadly mushrooms. But Facebook posts told another story. Photos of the dehydrator itself, trays of dried mushrooms, and images clearly showing her handling the equipment. Prosecutor Patrick Rogers detailed Patterson's purchase of the dehydrator and her trips to Loch and Outrim in April 2023, areas known for death cap mushroom growth. These visits, occurring months before the fatal lunch, painted a picture of planning. Digital forensic expert backed this timeline, revealing Patterson had accessed iNaturalist, a website for identifying wild fungi, in both 2022 and 2023. Her mobile devices contained photos of mushrooms on weighing scales and dehydrator trays, and investigators confirmed she had visited Loch twice during the autumn foraging season. However, the mobile phone used on those trips were never found. Then came the CCTV footage. Erin, shortly after the lunch, was captured dumping the dehydrator at the Coonawarra transfer station. Forensic testing revealed traces of death cap mushroom toxins, identical to the toxins found in the urine of her poisoned guests. The prosecution suggested that she never intended to eat the same meal. While her guests ended up hospitalised, 3 fatally, Erin claimed to have only suffered diarrhoea and vomiting. Yet, hospital records from Leongatha did not support this. She discharged herself against medical advice on the 1st of August 2023, something prosecutors said was another attempt to cover her tracks, a claim Erin denied. More inconsistencies followed. Nurse Cindy Monroe testified that Patterson was reluctant to allow her children to be tested for poisoning. Erin denied this too, of course. Erin also denied guest Ian Wilkinson's testimony that she had eaten from a plate of a different colour. It was heavily implied that Erin had used a different colour plate so that she knew which serving of the beef Wellington was safe to eat. And remember that Erin got her guests over to discuss her health condition? Well, it turns out that Erin Patterson never even had cancer. When questioned about this, she said that she had been too embarrassed to tell her family the truth. She was in fact preparing for gastric bypass surgery. When questioned about her supposed gastric bypass surgery, Patterson said that she had booked a pre-op appointment at Enric Clinic. But when investigators investigated this, the clinic did not even offer that type of surgery at all. So to the prosecution, this was yet another deliberate lie, part of a pattern of deceit designed to justify the lunch and hide her true intentions. Digital evidence also showed Erin's phone had been factory reset 4 times in 2023, including just days after the lunch. To the prosecution, the picture was clear. Premeditation, manipulation, and murder disguised as a family lunch. But then Patterson gave her version of events. She admitted to lying about having cancer, but said that she had done so because she was embarrassed to tell the truth about the gastric bypass surgery. She claimed the lunch was meant to reconnect with her in-laws before the operation. The Enric Clinic mix-up, she said, was just a misunderstanding, not a lie. Just like her other fabrications, she claimed it was poor judgment and not malice. Erin testified that she had foraged mushrooms for years and believed a tragic mix-up occurred, that deadly wild mushrooms had been accidentally stored in the same container as store-bought ones. She denied foraging specifically for death cap mushrooms and rejected the claim that she had done so just hours before buying the dehydrator. She said that she too had been vomiting and had diarrhea after eating the meal. And she also admitted to becoming anxious after hearing that death cap poisoning was suspected, and said that anxiety drove some of her dishonesty. She denied trying to mislead police or health officials and said she discharged herself from the hospital simply because she didn't need further treatment. She also rejected claims that she had tried to avoid suspicion by resetting her phone or refusing tests on her children. And while she acknowledged lying to the police about the mushrooms, the dehydrator and her health, she maintained that none of those lies meant she was guilty of murder. In the end, it was left to the jury to decide. Was Erin Patterson a woman caught in a web of fear, shame and tragic error? Or was she the architect of a calculated plot, carefully covered up and fatally executed over a Sunday lunch?
It's a tragedy what's happened.
Can you tell us about the meal that you cooked?
I'm so devastated by what's happened, by the loss of Don. Don is still in hospital, the loss of Ian and Heather and Gail. They were some of the best people that I've ever met. Gail was like...
Take your time.
Gail was the mum that I didn't have because my mum passed away 4 years ago. And Gail's never been anything but good and kind to me. And Ian and Heather were some of the best people I've ever met. They never did anything wrong to me, and I'm so devastated about what's happened.
Can you tell us
and the loss to the community and to the families and to my own children who've lost their grandmother. What I can tell you is that I just can't fathom what has happened. I just can't fathom what has happened. That Ian and Heather have lost their lives, and Gail has lost her life, and Donna's still in hospital, and I pray that he pulls through, because my children love him. I'm devastated. I love them. And I can't believe that this has happened, and I'm so sorry that they have lost their lives.
How are you kids?
I just can't believe it. Just can't believe it.
Can you tell us where the mushrooms came from? Police say you're a suspect. Do you have anything to say about that?
Yes, I say I didn't do anything. I love them. And I'm devastated that they're gone. And I hope with every fibre of my being that Don pulls through. That's
Where
what I
do the
have to
mushrooms
say.
come from? Were they picked by you, or where did they come from, Erin? Can you tell us? What meal did you cook them? Did you eat the same meal, Erin?
As the 6-week trial drew to a close, the final arguments from both sides made one thing clear. The jury would be left with two radically different interpretations of Erin Patterson's actions. On the 16th of June 2025, Prosecutor Rogers began the Crown's closing arguments. She accused Erin of orchestrating a calculated series of 4 key deceptions leading up to the fatal lunch on the 29th of July 2023. First, Patterson faked a cancer diagnosis, using it as a pretext to invite her in-laws and other guests over to lunch. Second, she deliberately added death cap mushrooms to the Beef Wellington, ensuring that neither she nor her children consumed the contaminated meal. Third, she faked illness, pretending to have diarrhea to mimic the symptoms of the poisoning. And fourth, Rogers said, she undertook a sustained cover-up, lying about where the mushrooms came from and dumping the food dehydrator at a landfill to destroy evidence. The same day, defence lawyer Mandy began his closing arguments. He told the jury the case came down to 2 critical possibilities. that Erin accidentally added death cap mushrooms to the dish, and that there was a reasonable possibility that she did not intend to kill or seriously harm anyone. He also challenged the reliability of key witness, arguing that human memory can be flawed. He downplayed Erin's past conflict with her in-laws and defended her testimony as honest, if at times imperfect. He pushed back harder against the Crown's theories. He rejected the claim that Erin had hoped her estranged husband would attend the lunch in order to kill him. He also disputed Ian Wilkinson's testimony that Erin had served herself on a different coloured plate. He claimed Erin's Google searches for death cap mushrooms were merely idle curiosity, not evidence of intent. He argued that there was no clear motive and that Erin's lies and phone resets were signs of panic, not premeditation. He urged the jury to consider the reasonable possibility of an accident, not a deliberate poisoning. Now, with all the testimonies complete and arguments made, the fate of Erin Patterson rested in the hands of the jury. Was this an accidental culinary catastrophe, or a calculated act of murder hidden behind a mask of hospitality? Erin Patterson was found guilty on all counts. I think one of the main things that confuses me with this case is that there was never really a clear motive. Yes, Erin Patterson had a strange relationship with her in-laws and husband, but is that really a reason to kill? Then again, people have killed for far less. And the lies over and over again about the mushrooms, the dehydrator, the cancer, the surgery, even the plate that she ate from. If this truly was a tragic mix-up, why not just tell the truth from the start? Because surely if it wasn't premeditated, if she had simply just made a horrible mistake, owning up to it early on would have meant less suspicion, maybe even a lighter sentence. But instead, she covered things up. If it was really an accident, and if you truly cared for the people who died, like she said she did, wouldn't you just be consumed by guilt? You wouldn't think about hiding evidence. You'd be in pieces. You'd be grieving. You wouldn't be at the tip dumping evidence or resetting your phone 4 times. And then there's Ian and Heather Wilkinson, 2 of the guests that were also poisoned. And obviously Heather Wilkinson did unfortunately pass away. But these 2 guests weren't even part of the family conflict. They had no strained relationship with Erin. They were just simply invited over for lunch. Who was she trying to target? Because if it was her in-laws and her husband, then why would she harm other people completely outside of the situation? And then there's a text message that she sent to Simon, and she seems desperate for him to attend the meal, like she really, really wants him to be there. That could have been another fatality. Sentencing has not yet taken place, and Erin Patterson can appeal her conviction. So, was it a tragic mistake? Or was it calculated murder? I think it's probably one of those cases that will be highly debated for years to come.
How are you,
I
Kister?
just can't believe it. Just can't believe it.
Can you tell us where the mushrooms came from?